Today we're going to talk about the Black Death. So, this topic might be very relevant with the current situation right now. Imagine one every four person that you know died within matter of days, less than a week. Imagine what will happen to a small village of 100. Imagine to a small town of like 10,000. One every four of them died. Now imagine a big city like Jakarta, which is about 10 million people. One every four of them died. And then imagine the dead were being piled up on the street simply because they do not have enough men to give them proper burial. And now imagine how will affect the minds and also the emotion of people who live in that city. So that's what happened to Europe, that's what happened to North Africa, and also that's what happened to some part of the Asia during the late 14th century. Yes, today we're going to talk about the Black Death. Late 14th century is a terrible time for the Europeans because of several events that happened in that time. They were being ravaged by war and conflicts between England and French, and also not just that one. There was a series of a long winter that affecting their harvest that leads to famine. They were also anxious and they also worries at imminent danger that anytime the Mongols will invade them from the east. And then to make this more complicated, also the church also have a leadership crisis. They have two popes, which is we will talk more about it in the future. And of all of these events, there's also this one particular thing that also terrible happens, which is the Black Death. Now let's talk about the Black Death. Now what is Black Death? Black Death is a name given by the historians about a particular plague by the name of Bubonic plague. Yes, Bubonic plague. Now what is this Bubonic plague? Now Bubonic plague it's caused by a bacteria known as the Yersinia pestis. The bacterium lives inside of the saliva of the fleas who lives in the rat. So this bubonic disease or the bubonic plague came from Central Asia in a region somewhere between the Black Sea and also the Caspian Sea. There, probably in the modern country of Kazakhstan or Uzbekistan. Somehow, these bacteria were harmless to rats. Apparently, it is harmful for human. At sometimes, this flea jump off from the rats and then bite humans. As human is being bitten by this rat flea who got infected with this Yersinia pestis bacteria inside of their saliva, then the disease also contracted humans. So it contagious interspecies from the rat's flea to human. How this particular endemic disease that exists only in Central Asia ends up traveling into almost three continents, which is a continent of Asia, Africa, only the northern part, and also Europe. How does it happen? Well, it because of the Mongols. Yes, the Mongols. The human migration from one place to another place become more common because of the Mongols reactivate the Silk Route. So does the rats. As the rats has this kind of like logic, oh, let's follow the human because human always have a leftovers or at least they have plenty of food and let's just eat their food. So there you go, these rats follow wherever humans build a settlement. And as the Mongolians invading like from one town to another town to another town, you can imagine the numbers of the death, right? Well, the rats are not being picky. They don't mind also to eat like dead human body corpses. And because of that one, they multiply. And so does also the fleas. The fleas who are also infected with the Yersinia pestis bacteria inside of their stomach. And this is how things get interested. Now, how it reached Europe? Well, no one's know for sure, but there's this particular interesting story about a group of merchant, Genoese merchant, which is the rival merchants of the Venice, which is the rival merchant city of Venice. So this Genoese merchant, they were trapped inside of a city of Kaffa, which is somewhere in the Black Sea, which is why they were trapped because the city was being under siege by the Mongolian army. Now the Mongolians, they were notoriously known for their terrorizing kind of like tactic, and they were very being highly adaptable as they are trying to starve. At the same time, they were trying to terrifying the people who live in the city of Kaffa by throwing dead bodies with the catapult into the city wall. And then as this dead corpses is decaying, it also become like the source of disease and also the rats. Now, well, don't get me wrong here. The Mongolians, they did not know like these rats contains bacteria. The Mongolians, they did not know that somehow it will contracting like the Black Death into their enemy. Probably if they would know, probably if they know, they will use it to their advantage. But no, that was not the case. Let's go back to these merchants. As these merchants desperately try to get away from the city of Kaffa, going back home, and finally they have a boat that willing to smuggle them out from the city. Unfortunately, this boat carries some of these infected rats. The rats are in that boat as the boat itself set sails to Constantinople. It is an important city because it connecting like the Asia and also Europe. And several days later, after the ship arrived in Italy, in Venice, something strange. Everybody in that ship died mysteriously. Because, of course, because of the disease. And it took only matter of days, it took only matters of weeks until the whole cities in Italy also infected with the bubonic plague. So the disease spread in Europe starting with the cities in Italy, and then within matter of 3 years in total, the whole Western Europe got infected with the bubonic plague or with the Black Death. Even all the way up to Scandinavian countries and also England. Of course, the cities in North Africa and also in Asia, the disease itself even reached China. If you're asking like, how come like the Mongolians, they were not infected? Well, of course, because they are Mongols. I guess it has something to do with their immune system, with their nomadic lifestyle that make them become more immune to any kind of like disease. Tough Mongolians. As the disease spread around Europe, in total, it was being recorded somewhere between 75 million people died. Some even claim that 200 million people died because of the disease. The numbers of the death because of the Black Death itself is so much larger than the numbers of the people who died because of the Mongols. Well, directly died because of the sword and trampled under the horse or shot by the arrow, if you got what I mean, okay? Well, somehow the Mongolians, they are indirectly also responsible for the spread of the disease. So it spread in Europe rapidly because at this moment Europe, as I said earlier in the beginning of the video, they have several factors and they also have several reasons why this disease spread so rapidly. Well, first, the cities in Europe were highly connected because of the roads, because of the trade. And not just that one, a lot of people at that time, they start to abandoning the farming life. They live in the city and then they live in the slums. Crowded places, hygiene is not the main important thing in that place. Of course, the disease spread like a wildfire in that kind of like environment. Did I say like they have a famine? Of course, it also affecting their immune system. Now, as I said earlier, it kills about like 1 every 4%. And some of the places even kill 50% of the population. The numbers of the death, it's skyrocketing. If you can imagine, if you live during those times, the view must be like very terrifying. As you are seeing piles of like a dead body being stacked up by the street, because simply they do not have enough men to bury them. And then they even have to dig out like the large pit just to bury these victims in batch. Instead of like making like one personal kind of like dugout for their burial, okay? They built mass burial ground, okay? And then not just that one, death can be like very, very intimate. You met your neighbor and then he looks fine in the morning, but then again the next day he died. As I said earlier, this disease is very deadly. It takes about less than a week for someone from 100% health into 0% health. Of course, not all of them who got sick and then they died. Some of them, they also survived. Their immune system is strong enough to defeat the infections. And let me describe you one more thing. The stench of the rotting flesh must be very strong. The smell is not nice. And then at this moment, at that time, they didn't know that what caused this disease. They have no idea. And lots of them, they thought that this disease is because of the bad air, because of this kind of like the stench, putrid smell that they have to sniff every day in the morning because of the dead. So some of the doctors, they have to wear some kind of a special mask that looks like a bird, look like a bird mask over here. On the tip of the beak of their mask, they put some fragrance, they put some spices which is like very rare and expensive to get rid of the putrid smells of the rotten flesh, just because they thought that the one that make them sick is the air. Of course, they had no idea that it was being caused by the fleas. If only they knew better. And then because of the numbers of the death are so overwhelming, people become afraid with those who are sick. People who got sick, they were being abandoned by their own family members, by their community, or by their neighbors. It was the monastery, it was the monks and also the nuns that the one who are taking care of the sick in their hospitals. And then because of that one, many of the monks and also the nuns, they died because of the disease. They got infected. But yet they did not stop helping people who got sick. Okay, now the symptoms of the bubonic plague. Of course, after you got bitten by this fleas, that you will get some kind of like a tiny rash on your skin because of course you got bitten by a flea. And then not just that one, after several days you start to have a fever. While you are having a fever, your lymph nodes start to swollen, which is, it looks like a tumor under your neck, under your armpit, and also the groins. This tumor is known as the buboes. This swollen lymph node that looks like a tumor, if it's break, the pus will come out from that tumor. And then after several days, then the victim, they start to coughing, or the victims start to coughing and vomiting blood. If that happens, that it will be like very certain. So as I said earlier, usually takes less than 7 days for someone who got infected until finally he died because of the disease. Why they name it Black Death? It's because of the victim's skin. As they got infected with this disease, their skin will become kind of like purplish to dark. Probably reminds you if you fell from your bicycle and then you have a bruises on your skin. Yeah, it looks like that. And then it's almost all over your body. That's why they name it as the Black Death. The Black Death lasted in Europe for about 3 years. And after this plague is over, Europe completely changed. The feudalism itself is no longer work as it should because the numbers of the peasants who died because of the Black Death also is quite enormous. Nobody will work for the land. Nobody will work for the farm. And because of that one, there's this kind of like the supply and demand principle happens because they have a lesser workers. So now the landlords, they have to willingly pay extra wages for the remaining few workers to work on the land. Well, no matter what, somebody have to work for the land, right? And it's not going to become the landlord or the masters. And now because of that one, these workers, these peasants, now they have a chance to accumulate wealth, to save up their money, to have a better life, and to have a better social status. So at this moment, you can see like the workers or the peasants now, they work for the profit. They work for the money, not simply because for the allegiance to their master or to their lord, just like according to the feudalism system. And not just that one, the Black Death also affecting the spiritual life of the people in Europe at that time, as they are start to questioning whether God really cares for them because the terrible things that they have to survive. They start to doubting God. And not just that one, some of them, they become like even more religious than before, as they are start to torturing themselves, they are start to hurting themselves, hoping that they will earn favor from God, because they thought that the Black Death was the punishment from God for humanity because of their sin. And even some, they went cray-cray, they start to persecuting people, and then they start to blaming people, they start to accusing people as the source of the disease. Some of the notable tragic story is like the way the Europeans, they round up the Jewish community. They start to blame the Jewish people as the one who spread the disease by putting poison in a water well, because somehow it seems to be none of the Jews, they got really affected significantly by this Black Death. That means they are the one who spread the disease. That's according to their logic. And not just that one, anyone who have a skin disease, even a simple rash, even a simple kind of like pimples on the face, were being accused as the source of the disease. So therefore, they will be round up and also they will be killed by fire. And last but not least, after the Black Death itself, the Black Death or the bubonic plague did not completely eradicated in the world. And after this plague, the Black Death did not completely gone from Europe. It occurs from time to time, it randomly. Well, of course, the death is not as significant as the first wave, but it still happened. It's still there until up to the late 19th century that Black Death can be completely removed from Europe. And here's the bad news. The bubonic plague still exists in this world, especially in this particular region, which is in Central Asia, that is the ground zero where this disease came from. It's still there somehow. If you're not careful enough, then you might be infected by the Black Death. However, the good news is, in modern times, it is so much easier to be treated and also to be cured and also to be prevented because of the inventions of antibiotics. Yes, antibiotics. And also pesticide. So in conclusion, yes, Black Death caused so many deaths, and it also changed the social order in Europe at that time. It breaks down the feudalism system. It also devastated the economy as the process of like producing food or goods also affected because of the numbers of the death, simply because they do not have enough men to deliver and to produce food. And also the Black Death also create a suspiciousness against each other, and it become a racism as they become suspicious towards the strangers, people who are not their kind, something like that. It's a terrible things. And then it was a common thing during those times, if you live during those times, thinking that this event was God's judgment upon them. It was the end of time. So it should become like a sober reminder for all of us that life can be very, very trivial. Oftentimes, life ends not through sword or guns, but then again through something that is microscopic, something like very, very tiny, that to the point that almost cannot be seen. It reminds us that the world is full of uncertainty, and that it's easy for us to be thrown into like doubt, and it's easy for us to be thrown into like fear and worries. It is so much important for us where we should put our hope, where we should put our faith. We should put our faith and hope in something that solid, and the foundation rock that never shake is only on God's word and His promises. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you for watching. I see you guys next time. Bye bye. God bless you guys all.